Hey everybody, Ben here for the Bonehead Podcast, and we've finished Beachhead. We wrapped up our last series, the beginning of the year, and we're barreling towards, essentially, Dungeon Bowl season. We've got Dorset Dungeon Bowl coming up on May 20th at Entoyment, and that means it's about time that we started getting work done on the next Bonehead Championship, the Dungeon Bowl Championship. So this is the first episode of the Dungeon Diaries. And why I'm calling it the Dungeon Diaries is because this is going to be a few weeks in the working. We've got some teams to build, we've got some rosters to design, and then we're actually going to build and paint the teams. And then we've got dungeons. We already have one dungeon. We used it for the final of the last series, and it was great fun to build, and it's broken, so I need to go back and fix that. That's not a big issue. We've got 2 more dungeons to build before we can even start filming. So we don't have very long at all. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the teams, and we're going to talk about the first dungeon that I've started building. Okay, so over on our website, the rules for Dorset Dungeon Bowl are there. Let's click it. Let's go have a look. So we've got 3 different dungeons. Dorset Dungeon Bowl is going to have 3 different rounds. Each round is going to have the same dungeon. We've got these dungeons printed on posters. Poster material, same as last time, and what that means is that we can roll out 50 players worth of dungeons without worrying too much about it. And it also means that if you want to play Dungeon Bowl using the setups, then you can get the mats for us as well. So it's kind of like a really easy way to play a load of Dungeon Bowl. Now, there's 2 maps that we used last year. We've kind of updated them. They are less pixelated now, and there are dugouts included on the actual pages, which is going to make it a lot easier for the tournament day. I forgot to put that in the last edition ones, and it meant we had to go and grab a whole bunch of pitches and just put a dugout on every player's pitch. It wasn't a massive issue, but this time it's going to be better. So 3 different dungeons, and if we have a look at the rules set, we can kind of see what they are. So let's scroll down. This is the rules pack on the website. We're going to be doing the teams using exactly the same build orders, and this time we're going to be using the full tournament rules. So the tournament points are going to determine which teams go through. Now we're going to feature all 8 colleges of magic again, because it's Dungeon Bowl and you got to do that. And there's going to be 3 dungeons. Last year there was 2 dungeons, so there was this one. This is the one that we used for round 1 and round 3 last year, which when it translated over to our YouTube series, whoa, what's happened to my chair? It's gone invisible. This is the one that we used for the first, like the inaugural round, and then that's why. Good lord, there we go, much better. And we used it for the final because I got it built in time for the final. This is going to be the round 1 dungeon. This is going to be the round 1 dungeon of Dorset Dungeon Bowl, and as we've already got it built, it makes a lot of sense to use this one to be the first 4 games essentially. And I think this was a really good matchup last time. Had a lot of different avenues, and I liked the general build of it. Then there was map 2. Now this is the one I've started work on right now. So in fact we've got map 2, and then we've got map 3, which I am particularly looking forward to building, and it's really good fun to play on. You've got some no man's land, you've got some dead man's corridors, but because of the positioning of the teleporter pads, you can go around it. So it takes the choke point and puts it in the middle of the pitch instead of just outside the door of the end zones. Although it's Dungeon Bowl, so there's always choke points for that as well. Anyway, let's have a look at Dungeon 1. We've seen that one. So Dungeon 2. This is the one that I have started to build. So the first dungeon we did, I made out of MG Pix did the Dungeon Bowl Kickstarter. He's actually got an expansion coming out for it on Tribes soon. And it was the 4x4 tiles, and I loved it. It was great fun. It took a lot of printing. We've upgraded our printing ability now with a with a nice little set of Saturn 2s, which is going to make printing a dungeon much easier. But we're not going to be using the MG Pix tiles for this second dungeon. We're going to be using the Mole King's Lair. So you may have seen on the channel us do kind of like a mini review, but of the Kickstarter when it went live. Actually had a little Skaven team as well, but they've got similarly kind of structured tiles that I think would work really nice for the dungeon. So we're going to have a look at my plan for this one on today's episode of the Dungeon Diaries. And then in the future, we're going to be building map 3, and this is the one I'm super excited about because you see, oh, that's a bit far in, Ben. this center zone here on the map, it's a corridor, right? It's a tunnel. You can kind of envision it in many different ways. The way we're going to build it is it's going to have height to it, and there's going to be nothing underneath it. This is going to be the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, basically. So this centerpiece is going to be raised above the board, and these two sections are kind of going to be down in the gutters. So you kind of got like the layer each side, and you've got two corridors at the bottom that kind of trail along the deeps, and then you've got one bridge of height across the middle as well. So it's going to look really, really, really cool. Again, Bridge of Khazad-dûm style is how we're doing it. But this is the map we're going to be working on. And trying to figure out how to make the doors work, how to make the walls work, it is a bit of a challenge, because when you go to 3D print a dungeon, you need to add additional space for the doors. On a map with the dungeon bolt tiles, it's not a problem at all. If you use those doors as a separator, then the tiles can get all higgledy-piggledy. Now, this is an interesting map because you've got the two end zones who are kind of opposite each other, but then you've got these edge corridors, and if the ball appears in one of these edge corridors, then the action tends to like flick to one side to the other. So it benefits the faster teams to be able to loop around to each of the sides to kind of find the ball quicker, but then the strong teams can actually shell up quite nicely. There's still 3 ways into the end zone room. That is one of the qualifiers for a dungeon, for Dorset Dungeon Bowl or the Dungeon Bowl Championship, is that there has to be 3 different ways into the end zone rooms, because otherwise it gets a bit too easy to defend. We don't want that. You're gonna have to stack the players in there to stop from scoring. This one kind of has 4 different lanes, kind of like a tower defense game or something like that. So this is the one we're going to be looking at. Now we're going to be using the Mole King's Lair for this one, and like I said, we did a Kickstarter review jobby, and I printed out some of the sections already. I printed out a room and a hall and a corridor. They're really good, okay? They look really nice. The extras look really good. The spacing on the board is fine. There's going to be a couple of bits where the models are going to struggle ever so slightly, but I really don't care because it's going to look so good. But the way we had to print these with a resin printer, remember we've got a rack of resin printers, I had to hollow them, I had to drill, I had to kind of puncture holes in them, and I had to print them at an angle like this. And 6 squares, an angle, it's about 12 hours. Big old prints. So the print I did for these, yeah, I got a room and a hall printed, and it took about 12-14 hours. It was an overnight print, which is fine. However, we look back at the map that we've got to build, there's quite a lot of segments there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 rooms? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 14 rooms, counting with Ben. Welcome. So 14 rooms, that's a lot of time printing, especially because the 8 square ones will be 2 sections as well. So it's 16 rooms, which would be essentially, if I could wangle it right, 8 to 10 overnight prints. That's a huge amount of printing time. And because you're printing all this at the back, it's also a huge amount of resin. I felt like there was a better way of doing it. Now, when you're printing in resin, there's always going to be additional cost. It's expensive-ish when you're printing terrain. It's a lot cheaper than buying Games Workshop terrain. Don't get me wrong, but it is expensive. It can be painful, and if it fails, it's the worst. If this fails halfway through, you've lost 6-8 hours and about £5 worth of resin, which is a bit of a nuisance. So I came up with a cunning strategy, and my strategy was to actually pre-slice the files and print them flat on the base of the bed. I'm going to bounce over to Chitubox and show you what I mean. Okay, so Chitubox, this is how a tile comes, okay? So first of all, for resin, you've got this little lip here that when it goes to print, if we zip it down a bit, goes from absolutely nothing to something all in one go. Now, that's not normally a great success for printing because there's going to be parts of this that's got nothing to stick to. So what you're going to end up with is kind of either a fail at that point where everything north of this is just non-existent because it's in the bottom of your vat, or it will succeed but it will kind of come out at a cone angle with all this stuff semi-cured in the bottom of the resin tray, which is then going to cause more failures and it's just going to be a disaster. And ultimately, I'm not being funny, but all of this stuff here we don't need. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, is if I print them like this, they're kind of pre-supported, okay? They're designed to print flat up on a plastic tray. We get rid of that lip, we should be able to print it on resin, which I'd be happy with, and we're saving all of this solid resin. Because if we were to print this piece as a solid piece, let's click slice and see how OBS likes it. Alright, it's only going to take 53 minutes, but this piece is going to take £5.30 worth of resin. And then you've got to print the walls and stuff as well, so we're looking at probably £7.50, £8 for each tile. And we've already said that there's 14 tiles, 2 of them are double tiles, so 16 tiles. 16 times 8, I don't even know anymore, right? I'm just going to hazard a guess that is, I don't know, 150 quid. That's a lot of money. But if we slice it, if we cut it in half, if we decrease that resin volume, then actually what I can do is, here's one I've made earlier, as we say, let's tuck you down, and I've been prepping some of these files already. We can get a cross tile like this, we can slice it down, and actually you can print it. Now the difficulty is with some of these that they're actually too big to fit on the Saturn II tray, so we need to then cut it even further using the builder, and actually what we get is the different pieces, and I can include this in one print and this piece as a single print by itself. And this T-junction now, it was £5.30 I think for the other tile, this is £2.70. Alright, there's another little bit to go on, so we'll say just, I don't know, £3.50. Well, actually, that other piece was a 6x2, wasn't it? So 6x2 was £5.30. This is more than a 6x2 at £2.70. Absolutely fine. So that we've halved the resin cost at that. Now, it could be a bit of a faff doing this, and I'm going to have to do this for each of the tiles, but I've got a cunning strategy for doing so. And in fact, if we now bounce to my web browser again, I will show you my strategy. Looking at these tiles, there's a couple of things we've got to pay attention to, and one is that they're not just the tiles. There is an edge to them. So some of these pieces, so the hall pieces have got an edge left and right, and if we take the room, bang all the bits off so they don't fall on my tray. Okay, see, chunky boy. There's a lip, essentially. There's this wall piece all the way around. So when we build our dungeon, we have to budget for the fact that the sides of the corridors and the sides of the room are going to have an extra, I don't know, centimetre on the edge of it, which is fine. Now, we're going to be building this straight on MDF, the same way we did with the other one. So we don't need it to be modular, and it can be glued down. So I'm not too worried about it being flexible. That was one of the really useful things about the last dungeon, is we saved resin on the magnet bit and the connectivity, because I wanted to model it onto a board and get that old school vibe. So we've got these with the lips on, that's where the walls go. And when it comes to the rooms, they've got a lip around the entire edge. So I'm a big Google fan. I do Google Sheets, and now I've gone for Google Slides. So what I did was I took a map of our dungeon, of this dungeon here. Woo! Okay. And I built each of the segments like this, and I put the walls in, and I separated it out to try and get my head around where we were going to have those additional lips, so I could make sure that each of the sections lined up all right when it's printed. And then had to consider the fact that doors are their own element as well. So if we look at the doors in this dungeon, click the dungeon, okay, we can zoom down, you can see that the door bits are actually their own fit-in piece in the middle. They kind of have their own lip. Now, interestingly, there's a door. We'll use this door here. We can see that actually there's that extra lip there. And I've not used them for the edge here, which is fine. That's good. That means we can actually straight ball from one place to another, which is wonderful. That's not lined up. Come on, guys. Whoa. Picture looks great, but not lined up. Ah, there's a door. There's a door. That's what I'm talking about. So here, this goes straight corridor onto that bit. You've got the lip at the edge of the room, but it's a minor lip and it's fine. Then you add a door in there, and you've got this, it's probably about 20 mil here, that's going to throw it out. So by balancing it out here, I've got door, 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 which means in each corridor we're going to have one extra 20 mil space in there. That's good. What we can't have is 2, because that would throw the entire length out and that would give us a bit of a gap. There was a little bit of that with our first dungeon using the MG Pix ones, and I fudged it by kind of cutting the tiles, spreading them out a little bit, adding some gravel in there and kind of blending it together. That's one of the real advantages of being able to produce one board forever. Like, you can kind of fudge the edges, use some filler, I think I used a lot of filler, and just kind of paint over it, and it works just fine. And I think if you watch the original Dungeon Bowl series where we used the tiles, there were some elements where it was unclear where the wall was or where the doors were. And then when we started using the 3D dungeon, it became way easier for us to figure out what was a wall and what was a door. And in fact, even the posters were a massive step up on the Games Workshop tiles. They didn't move, they were all preset. I thought it was really useful. So I've mapped out my different tiles here. So I've got a couple of rings in places where I've been actually prepping these files up. So the blue ones are these tiles here. Now, as I've said, they've got a bottom lip on, so I'm going to have to take a X-Acto blade or some clippers and cut that down to just this bottom piece so that I can glue it on. There'll be maybe a half a mil higher than the rest, but again, going to glue it, cover it with sand around the edges if it looks a bit squiffy. It isn't going to make any odds, which is very, very useful. So we're going to do that. Then we've got those door elements, we've balanced those in, and now what I've got to do is prep each and every one of the cut files. And we'll have a quick look at that as well, because I think it's worth looking at, and if you're interested in this kind of stuff, then it can be a useful little exercise. So on my map, I need 2 straight pieces. I've got 1 straight piece, and I've prepped and printed the other straight piece. And it has worked. It's outside, I've got it... what's the kind of best way to put it? I tend to rest my resin. Printers print upside down. So when you finish a print, there's a lot of loose resin at the top of the model. You take it off, you flip it up to the right way, and then that resin is just all at the top and going to goop it up. When it comes to cleaning up a model, or, you know, cleaning up terrain especially, you want that resin to drain off. So what I do is, if I've got a print that I want to rest, I will wrap it in tinfoil and chuck it in the cupboard. And what I've done with these pieces is I've got some tinfoil trays left over from Christmas, from cooking veg and stuff, and I've slapped my print in the tinfoil tray, covered the front, made sure it's lightless, and that loose resin is then just going to drain off, meaning that I can clean up the print a lot better, which is going to be much better for my IPA. Sadly, there's a lot of loose resin, and it makes me very sad because loose resin is literally just loose money, but we've already halved our resin cost, and actually if we can save all the cleaning up works as well by resting our pieces, we can do that. So I've got 1 that I've prepped and printed. I've got these 2 here which are also printed. Now I've still got to print all the gribbly bits, but I'm going to do that on an overnight print. It's not going to be a massive print, but some of the longer ones, especially like the door pieces, if I print them at kind of a 45-degree angle, 45 is probably a bit too much actually. 15 to 30-degree angle, it's going to be a 6-hour, 7-hour print. So I'll do that overnight, and I can make 2 trays for the S2s and just fill them with all the pieces, print them overnight, and print the tiles during the daytime. So I can hot swap them over, I can flick them off, pop them in the little tray to rest and have all that resin run off, and save some time in cleaning. So the test print has worked. We've got these 2 tiles here prepped already. I haven't done any of the doors. Now, the little orange symbols represent the prints that I've already prepped. So we've had a quick look at we've had a look at the T-junction, and I've prepped both the corners too. And just for my kind of record keeping, I'm tracking which parts they are as well. So I've named them like B2 or B1, just so I can kind of keep abreast of what's going on and where stuff is. So this is one of the corner prints, and what I've done, and I'll show you how to do this in a minute using the 3D printer, 3D builder. I've sliced the tile, got rid of the down below bit, and then I've sliced it again so that it will fit onto a tray. And when I printed this, when I prepped the print, I was able to just chuck it on there. So even though the corner junction won't fit on the tray, like as a whole, cut the end off, and because I'm going to be gluing it to the wood, a big bit of MDF at the end of it, I don't mind the tile being split. And this becomes, you know, saves me from being like a £6 worth of resin to just about £3 worth of resin, which works really, really nicely. So I need to work my way through and prep all these pieces that I've got on my map here. And the orange ones are prepped, so we've got the T-junction we've looked at. There's only one T-junction in the Kickstarter, so I'm going to have to double it. Not really going to matter. There's 2 different corner junctions, so I'm happy to work through those as well, which is fine. Like, I don't mind. Now, we've got a load of rooms to do. And there's a couple of things here to mention. Which room are we going to go for? There's 2 touchdown rooms. We've got 1 already, so we do need to prep another touchdown room. Can't remember which one it is, so we're not going to do that. We're going to go for Rune B is the room that we are going to look at. I'm going to open it up in 3D Builder. Okay, so found out how to make it work. So 3D Builder, what we're going to do is we're going to import this tile. This is what's called Rune B, and it's going to throw up the repair thing. That's why it's red. Just ignore that. So this is the lip that we need to get rid of, because like we said, if we print this, it's going to cause us a bit of an issue. Plus there's like 4 mil 5 mil of resin that we just straight up do not need. So we're going to import it. We're going to split it here, which is perfect. So when I split things, I like to see how deep the model is, but you can see that we can actually choose our depth of removal. I think 2.5 is where I've been cutting, which is perfect. And what you can see is that it takes us to that point of the lip. If we go 4 mil, you'll see that that's the lip we're trying to get rid of. So we can go down to 3 mil, and you can see there's a little bit of the lip left. 2.5 mil as a cut. That lip is now gone, and we've got just that bottom layer, or the top layer of the base of the tile, which is what we want. So we're going to click split there, and that is going to be the tile that we want. Now, however, that is going to be too big for the S2. That's too big. You can print it at an angle. I don't want to print it at an angle. What we want to do is print it, sadly, in 2 parts, because as the S2 goes, the plate it can only handle maybe 2.5 squares wide. So it'll print a 3x6, no problem at all. But a 4x4 won't fit. So we're going to need to split it again, and we are going to need to roll this 90 degrees so it's halfway. Now the cool thing is about the way this 3D Builder does this is it will genuinely just take it at halfway point. Now it's always worth checking to see if there's anything along there that looks like it's going to be too thin. That's going to cause an issue when printing. So there's this bit here which actually I think will be fine. So we're going to keep the top for the first bit, and there we go. So we've now cut and split one piece, well, 1/2 anyway. So we're going to call this half 1 STL. Then we're going to use the magical Control Z to bring all the tile back, and we're going to click it, we're going to split it, we're going to do 90-degree roll again, and we're going to keep the bottom this time, and we're going to save that as an STL, and we're going to do half 2. Back in Chitubox, we can see that we've now taken that file, which was a giant boy. In fact, I'll chuck that tile into here so you can see what we started with. What was this? Let's get rid of you for a second, which wouldn't have printed and would have been absolutely massive, and we've been able to just kind of cut it down to this. And what that's going to allow me to do is, I'll admit, over quite a few prints, but the cool thing about this is that I know there's going to be some resin that goes missing, but if we give that a quick slice, there you go, £2. So that's going to be about £4 for that room, for the tile. Then you've got all the stuff on top, so it's not a cheap process, but we're going to be able to print this for about £100. I think probably about 3 tubs of resin will be fine. And it says 38 minutes there. It lies. You can add sort of 20% of the time on, but it's still going to be an hour a print for the tiles, which again is going to be fine, because if we look back at our plan here, we can see that we printed 1, 2, 3 already. All right, we've got the props pieces, so the bits and bobs that kind of go into the tiles, which I am a massive fan of. So you kind of print the flat bits, then we can print the assets off as well, and we're going to end up with a whole bunch of stuff like this that's kind of stuck on the pitch, which is just an absolute dream, because it is going to look fantastic, as we're going to have the dudes, and the dudes are going to be running around, and we're going to have Brute Fun Skaven just wrecking face in the dungeon, which makes me exceptionally happy. We can print that and we get the 3D element of it. So let's just say, I don't know, what do you say, £4 for a tile here, £8 for a tile there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, £24 for those. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's another £16 for that, so that's about £40 for that. And then you've got all the little dungeon tiles, which is probably about £5 each, so that's another 60 quid, another 30 quid, so 70 quid. Then all the props, which we can hollow if we need to, if they're particularly big, we can hollow to save resin as well. I reckon we can do this for about £100 with the resin on top, which is fine. That's an investment that at 100 quid for a fully 3D dungeon, I'm really excited about. That's cool. I can pace it out, and Tiff may never find out, which is pretty cool. Let's just hope she doesn't check the Amazon thing. So we've got our prep, we've got our plan, and that is the plan for Dungeon 2 anyway. And when it comes to the teams, we're going to do something a little bit different for this one. Last time we brewed up all the dungeons. Actually, we got a few weeks before we're going to start filming this. We're going to do something different with that as well. I'm hoping to book out the RPG room at Entoyment for a solid weekend and put an open invite out there. Do some slots and see if anybody wants to come down and play a game of Dungeon Ball for the channel. That could be really good fun. Entoyment's wonderful, and actually it'd be great to have some different people on, and if we get double booked, then they can play themselves, and it'd be cool to see some different coaches get involved. I'm actually hoping that we can get some of the players who are going to be playing at Dorset Dungeon Bowl in May to participate in filming the series in kind of March. I think that'd be really cool. Nice way to warm up in the actual dungeons and get some different players onto the channel, which would be pretty cool. So I have got my first print on the go. It's setting. I've now got 2 more on the go. In about an hour, I'll take them off and I'll put 2 more on. And I really need to get going prepping these rooms, although we've just prepped 1 room. So we've got a plan for this dungeon. The next dungeon will be completely different, and I think I'm probably going to wrap it up there. But when it comes to the teams, look out for some posts, because I'm going to task the YouTube crew to brew us up some rosters for some of them, the Patreon crew to brew up some rosters for 2 more of the teams, and Discord to brew up some for the other ones as well. I know that there's a bunch of you that are all across the board, in which case you get to participate in brewing all the teams up. We're going to build the rosters to your spec, or at least we're going to kind of pick what we think is the right thing that's achievable, and we're going to go that way. And we haven't quite decided on the format yet. Last time we did 7 games. We did 4 with an individual knockout round. I think what we're going to do this time is do 2 full rounds and then take the top 4 based on tournament points and do a knockout round there. So it's going from 7 games to 11 games, which means we get to spend more time in each of the dungeons. I'd like to play the first 4 games in Dungeon 1, the second 4 games in Dungeon 2, and the final 3 knockout games on the Bridge of Khazad-dûm board for games, the last 3 games of those for the finals, which would give us good coverage of each of the dungeons, which would kind of make me feel happy because we get to use the cool camera equipment on the cool 3D dungeons. And what I don't want to do is what happened last time, which is lovingly paint a team and then have it be done within 15 minutes. At least that way every team would kind of get 2 showings, and we could add some special features, some special rules. Last year we put a call out to say, hey guys, come up with some great rules for us, and we only really got to use 1. Now this time we could actually open it up and maybe brew up some cool stuff for round 2. I want to see spiders in the dungeon, because that's just a classic dungeon trope. Anyway, I apologise, this has been a bit of a rambly episode, but it is day 1 of the Dungeon Diaries. The intro. This is the plan for Dungeon 2. It's underway, and I'll check in with you in the week, next week, when it's all printed, so you can see how far we've got. Anyway, you got some ideas, you got some feedback, you got some inspiration, chuck it in the comments. But otherwise, I'm going to disappear. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more bubble content. Happy dungeoneering. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube Members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.